Hello, how are you? I don't know about you, but after the past year we've had, I could use a really good laugh. And I've been thinking recently, I'd really like to find some good comic fiction, but books which aren't just like a comedy routine, but that also tell a good story, have something interesting to say, and are really well written. And last year, at the beginning of lockdown, I made a TBR list in which I talked about some books which are slightly more light-hearted reads that I wanted to get to, including PG Woodhouse and his World of Jeeves, because these novels are so entertaining and have such witty characters in them that they're just a joy and a pleasure to read. And so I was thinking recently, like, oh, I'd like to find some other books that are like PG Woodhouse, that are modern books. And because I follow a lot of book prizes, I thought, oh, maybe I should look at a book prize list, because of course there's a book prize dedicated to PG Woodhouse himself, which is the Bollinger Everyman Wodehouse Prize for comic fiction. And so it's Bollinger, after Bollinger Champagne, the sponsor of the prize, and Everyman's Library, and they're fantastic books, which I'm always a fan of. And I hasten to add, I am not sponsored by this book prize to make this video. I'm not sponsored by Bollinger, although, I love champagne. And so if somebody from Bollinger is watching this and wants to sponsor one of my videos, get in touch. I did a really overemphasized Lucille Bluth style wink just then, didn't I? Wank! But I thought it would be good to look at this year's prize list for some guidance of some good new comic fiction. And this prize has been running for 21 years. Some past winners that I've really enjoyed include Vernor God Little by DBC Pierre, which was also a Booker Prize winner, and A Short History of Tractors in the Ukraine by Marina, Lewycka, which is a fantastic novel and really fun to read. So yeah, I'm looking at the 6 books that are listed for this year's prize. So I'm going to go through each of them and give short summaries of them, my thoughts about them and why I'm interested in reading them. But I'd really love to hear from you if you've read any of these books, if you would recommend them as well, or if you're interested in reading them now, or if you have read any other really good, great comic books recently that you would recommend, not comic books, but books that are comic. You get what I mean. If you want to recommend some of those in the comments below, I'd really love to hear about them and would appreciate that. So these are the 6 books shortlisted for this year's prize. And I've not read any of them yet. So it's like I'm a kid in a candy shop picking and choosing where I want to start with. And the winner of this year's prize has also already been announced. So I'll say what that is at the end after talking about all these books in turn. Starting off with Between Beirut and the Moon by Naji Bakhti. And this is about a boy growing up in Beirut after the Civil War and his encounters with a number of people in the city. And he has this aspiration to become an astronaut, but who has ever heard of an Arab astronaut? I mean, that's what it says on the back of the book. That's not me saying that. It talks about his aspirations for that and his sort of dreams of becoming an astronaut, but also, his encounters with all these different personalities in Beirut that are in Lebanon that are sort of recovering still from the trauma of the Civil War. So I think it gives like an interesting point of view about that, but in a sort of lighthearted tone of all these encounters and his sort of coming of age story. And sounds like a really good book. I remember when this was first published and I thought it sounded really interesting and I wanted to get to it, and so I'm glad to have this push to finally read it. Destination Wedding by Diksha Basu, and this novel is about a young woman who was born in India but grew up and has spent most of her life in America, and she's had some experiences in her childhood when they would travel back to India to visit family, but most of her life has been spent in America, and so she feels like she doesn't completely understand or know the country that she was born in, but she gets a chance to travel back to India for her cousin's wedding, and she thinks this is an opportunity to really get to know the country in a like personal and intimate way. And so it's her experiences doing that and her sort of comic misadventures of experiencing modern day India. And yeah, that sounds like a really good story, as well as like a fun way of looking at this issue of national identity and trying to figure out, how we characterize who we are by where we were born and the culture we were raised in. Temporary by Hilary Leichter, and this is a novel about a woman who takes a whole series of temporary jobs in many different fields of employment, and she also takes many different boyfriends and is sort of trying out these different jobs and these different boyfriends as a way of trying to figure out the kind of life she wants for herself. And it does this in a sort of comic, lighthearted way. And I've heard really good things about this book. It's another book that I remember when it was published. It was one that I wanted to get to, and I'm really looking forward to reading this. Fake Accounts by Oyler. This is a novel about a young woman who, on the eve of Trump's inauguration as president, is snooping through her boyfriend's phone and discovers that he's a secret internet conspiracy theorist, and quite a prominent one at that. And so after this revelation, she decides to move out of the country. She moves to Berlin, and she gets involved in some manipulation and deception of her own. And so this sounds like quite a lighthearted, interesting take on quite a serious and very modern problem. Ghosts by Dolly, Alderton. This is a novel about a woman in her early 30s who feels that all her contemporaries around her are sort of settling down and, becoming proper adults, and she's trying to do this as well, but she's figuring out what she really wants in her life. And, it feels like that stage in your life when things are getting serious and you have to make really difficult decisions that'll probably affect the rest of your life. And so it's following that whole process in quite like a lighthearted and comic way. And I remember when this came out, there was quite a scathing review of it written by Pierre, who, if you've been on BookTube for a while, you may know the self-proclaimed legendary Baz Pierce, whose channel was so funny, and he was such a wonderful presence on BookTube. And I was sad when he decided to stop making videos, but since then he's become a proper book reviewer and has written reviews for a number of publications, and wrote a review of this novel which was really scathing about it, and received quite a big backlash from people in the book community, like defending the author and this book. And personally, I didn't have any opinion about it really, because I've not read the book yet, and also I wasn't really familiar with Dolly Alderton, although lots of people seem to be. I mean, she's a journalist and a columnist and a podcaster, and so I think it's quite like a popular figure, but one that I don't happen to be very familiar with. So I just didn't really have much of an opinion about that, but I thought that was a little interesting bit of gossip about this book. But I'm intrigued to read it and find out for myself. And finally, there is The Accidental Collector by Kennaway, and this is a novel about a man who's one of the most successful art dealers in the world, and he decides one day to establish a gallery in the rural English countryside. And there he meets a penniless hippie who he gets involved with in a number of ways. And it involves $1 million paintings, but also some worthless tat. And so I think this novel is sort of poking a bit of fun at the art worlds and looking at the whole crazy industry of the art worlds, but also what we sort of really value in our culture and in our society, and sort of taking a comic look at that. So those are the 6 books on this year's shortlist, and the winner of this year's prize is the Accidental Collector. And I'd really like to get to reading this book because, yeah, it sounds like a really good, fun story. And so Guy Kennaway, he was awarded a crate of Bollinger champagne as well as a piglet. Each year, the winner of this year's award it gets given an actual piglet, and so I'm not sure why that is, but yeah, it's a sort of funny, strange thing to go along with a book prize award. But yeah, I'm really interested in reading all 6 of these books. So like I said, let me know in the comments below if you've read any of them and would especially recommend any of them, or if you're interested in reading them now, or if you have any other recommendations of really good, absorbing comic novels that you have read recently and really recommend. Please let me know about those, and we can have a chat about that. But thank you for watching. I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.